terms of me starting Idli Factory. One was the fact that my job was a very intense traveling job, and in the last 7 years of my work, I probably did something like about 750 flights. And being a vegetarian, I really used to struggle with the kind of food options on planes. And not just that, it's also the timing of the flight and so on and so forth. So I've never understood why airlines won't allow you to take your food away with you. Because after I get off in the airport to my destination, I still have at least half an hour, 1 hour of car time, right? And I've written to so many airlines, domestic and international, basically saying, why don't you pack my food? I've paid for it. And so I realized that food for the traveler was something that most organizations in the travel business really don't pay much attention on. If you have to travel for a living, it can be quite stressful, and you really want comfort food. You don't want the fancy stuff. And it's got to be dry, it's got to be tasty, even if it isn't hot. It's got to be non-messy, so you can kind of throw it in your laptop bag. So this was a thought that was breeding in my mind. Honestly, I didn't think that much about it until until one day when, a few months before I quit, I'd gone to a fairly leading restaurant along with a friend of mine about 7 in the morning for breakfast, and I ordered a plate of idli. The bill came up to 77 rupees. And I looked at it and I said, my God, this is crazy. And as you look around it, you realize that a large part of what you're paying for is the infrastructure, the air conditioning. So I started thinking, how much of that 77 is for the food itself, right? And so I realized if people are willing to pay that sort of money, why not just give them the food for that kind of amount? So how can you pack maximum value for the amount of money people spend on food? And I quit primarily because I was also getting very burnt out with all this travel, and I wanted to spend time with my family. I said, let me start making idlis, at least for those regular travelers, because by now on a Monday morning I could recognize the faces of other haggard people who had to travel for a living. So I said, let me start doing this. And so this whole thing started initially like a hobby. And of course we went through about 4 or 5 months of work and research on this whole thing. But that was basically where this whole thing came. So it wasn't like one morning, one bright idea. It was really, I think, a series of events and some personal pain that kind of triggered this whole thing. First couple of months I just slept. I think I had to kind of just remove all the fatigue in my system. And it was only after November that I said, okay, let me start doing this. And I said, let me do this in the way I want it to be done, right? So there was a very simple rule. Contrary to what the people turn around and say, do your market survey, this, that, and all of that, I actually went about it the opposite way. I said, this is what I would have liked to have eaten, and this is the way I would have wanted it presented, etc. And so we launched finally about 4 or 5 months later. Once I designed the idli, we changed the shape of the idli, as you know, we designed the boxes differently, etc. and launched it in April. And for the first couple of years, it was pretty much a fairly casual operation. Because of a couple of developments. One was the airport started stocking our idlis, and that happened actually over a year ago. That was an interesting development. But then we got breaks to get into the railways, and that kind of changes everything, because suddenly now you're looking at this unimaginably large opportunity. And in addition to that, I've been talking to a few other retailers who've got a national presence. These retailers, to be more specific, are a chain of pharmacies. And so I went to this pharmacy, I spoke to the CEO, and I said, how long are you going to sell just tonics and tablets? Food is medicine. And how come you guys are willing to sell candy and 5 stars and chocolates, but not idlis, which is a very, very healthy food? And his eyes kind of lit up, and I think the coin dropped, and he promptly sanctioned a pilot. So I kind of quickly, in years of habit, right? Even though I said I'm going to do this as a hobby, years of habit, you start pushing the whole thing and you say, okay, if I get this pilot going right, will you give me a national deal? So the way I'm kind of trying to look at it right now is there is this enormous opportunity on the table. It's taken us about 3 years. It's also probably taken me 3 years to kind of get out of that I'm taking a break from work kind of mode. I think I'm ready now. And I'm seeing that there's this extraordinary opportunity that it will be a pity not to monetize. And so over the last few months, it's become a far more serious venture. The conversations are becoming different. I've started opening Excel spreadsheets again.